Hi, I'm Charlaine Martin from BeTotallyFitForLife.com. I've been working in my garden trying to get it ready to grow some plants and have some great fresh organic produce that I usually grow every year. And we're working on putting this garden in more permanent. As you can see, I have garden boxes and I have some berry bushes back there. They're kind of hard to see in the video. But as you can see, we're doing some cleanup and it needs some work, but it's going well. One of the things I had to do to start preparing my garden was actually to weed. There's a lot of weeds that grow in my garden, like this grass here, as you can see. Yeah, when I pull it, it has a root system to it. And it's like it's connected to something. I just broke it off. But it's almost like somebody took a sewing needle and sewed these grass pieces in there. And so when you pull up one, then there's a long root that threads through, and then another one pops up. And thankfully that one hadn't been there for very long. But I've pulled up a few doozies, I'll tell you. And some other ones that I pulled up, let's see, I saw one earlier. It was a dandelion. I must have gotten them all for the most part, but the dandelions here, if I take this apart, have a long root. And thankfully this one is smaller, it's not very big, but they can have a root that can go several feet down into the ground. And they get spread by all these seeds that blew around in July and August and even into September, and they scattered everywhere, including my garden bed. So I had to take care of them. But I started some seeds, and I'd like to show them to you. See, I have a pepper plant here that I started from seed inside. They're really not ready to be outside, so he's going to go in when I'm done. And I started some chives that'll be growing inside my house, so I can just snip them off and use them in delicious dishes. But I grow everything organic. The soil, I usually add compost to it to give it a boost, and I make sure that it's very well broken up so that the seeds can take root easily. But I'm really not here to talk to you about gardening. I'm here to talk to you about the Bible. In Matthew chapter 13, Jesus was teaching a large crowd in the region of Galilee. And so many had gathered that he actually had to get into a boat on the Sea of Galilee, which was actually a lake. It's fresh water. When we were there, we were amazed that it was fresh water. And he went out into a boat a little ways where the crowd could actually see him and hear him. And he went on to tell them about the parable of the soils. He talked about how seeds were scattered on a pathway. Now, if you sowed seeds on my pathway, it's kind of hard. It's beaten down right now. I have some fabric on it, but they don't, or didn't at that time. But it's beaten down and it's hard, so it's hard for a seed that germinates to actually root down into it, and so it just dies. Then he talks a little bit about plants in the rocks. And here's some right here, although this is grass. It grows up quickly, and when the sun beats down on it, because it's not very deeply rooted, it dies. And this can't go very deep, but at any rate, now you see the rhizome part, but it's easily pulled up too. So the first seeds are eaten up by the birds, the ones on the hard path. The ones in the rocks, they grow up quickly, but then they die in the heat in July and August. Then there are the thorns that they talked about, probably briars. Here we get some thistles that are pretty nasty, and they suck up all the nutrients. They overshadow the growing plants that you want, And they don't get enough sun, they don't get enough water because the weed, that huge monster weed, is overshadowing it. But then the seeds are sown on the fertile soil, like what's in my garden box here. It grows and it produces fruit several times over. Let me ask you a question. What soil are you? You know, there are people that they hear the word and just brush it off and go on their own merry way. Then there are people who they receive the word gladly, like in the rocks, and they think it's great. But here's the deal. They don't last very long. Life just takes over. Then there's the ones that are sown in the thistles. And because of the cares of this world and problems and difficulties, they just don't thrive. Those cares overshadow them, and they can't possibly get past it. But then there are those that grow like my garden boxes. They just thrive. And it's amazing to see how quickly they spring up, how well they bush out. And the amount of produce that I get from just these little boxes is amazing. I hope you're one of the people in the fertile soil, like in my garden box, that you produce fruit. And one of the things about my garden boxes is they have a boundary. Now I'm going to be putting up a fence around my garden, around the perimeter, because we get creatures called deer, groundhogs, and rabbits, and they love the buffet in my garden if I don't put up a fence. The church is a lot like the fence, the boundaries, the boxes. It helps protect us. It helps nurture us. And if you want to be really fruitful, you need to be in with God's people and learn from your pastor. Now Jesus went on to another parable called the parable of the wheat and tares. And it's interesting, he had one and then the other. So there was this man, and he had a wheat field. And it was growing beautifully. Fertile soil. It was wonderful. But his workers noticed something really weird. There were tares, weeds, that grew up. And I think I've experienced tares because I grew some corn last year. And some of those weeds look exactly like my corn, but they're not. Given time, you will see the difference between them. And they're nasty. Their roots tangle in with the root system of the corn, so if I pull it up, it pulls up the corn too. So the workers say, "Master, you should see these tares. Do you want us to pull them out?" And the master goes, "No, because if you do, you'll uproot the good plants too. So just let them grow together. And then what we'll do is we'll bundle them up, or bundle up the tares when we pull them. We'll harvest the grain, burn the tares, and all will be well." Well, you remember those dandelions that I showed you that root down? Now remember, in the parable of the wheat and the tare, it was an enemy who sowed those nasty seeds to cause a problem for the man who owned the field. Well, we have an enemy too, and his name is Satan. And he plants seeds of weeds into our hearts, very much like those dandelions and the thistles. And those usually come from vain philosophies and deceitful religious practices. Are you dabbling in New Age? Are you doing mindfulness meditation? They root down deep into your soul. And they will just really choke you out. Then there are the other weeds, which are rhizomes. And those come more from the attitudes and preconceived notions that we have. And they root down deep, and they kind of string along in our lives, and they cause us little problems. Is it time to do some weeding? I know that sometimes I get little things like attitudes, and it's like, ooh, pull that one up. Sorry, Lord. but I'll tell you what, the New Age movement is seriously dangerous. It's in our health and fitness, it's in our medical fields, it's in wellness practices such as massage and stress reduction and relaxation and sleep techniques. It's so easy for it to get planted because it's been scattered broad. It's time to make sure that you don't get those seeds rooted down in deep. And that can come by confessing to the Lord what you've gotten yourself into. Are you practicing yoga? That's why I teach praise moves. You can get the physical benefit without the weeds of the New Age. You need to be firmly rooted in God's Word, in that rich soil, and nurtured in His church, a body of believers where you are fed and well cared for. I do hope that you would be willing to talk this over with me sometime. You can email me at totallyfit63@gmail.com. You can put comments below this blog post, and you can even contact me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I would love to talk to you. May God bless you.